Hello, Maria. And on the phone this morning, I have Senator Lee. Do you say it Beyer or Beyer?
Beyer.
Beyer. Sitting in for Arnie because Arnie Roblin wasn't able to call in this morning. That's okay. We have you. Good morning.
Okay. Good morning.
We were talking real quick before we went on the air. And I know we've had several people come in. I think Mark Labhart's talked about it. Bill Bartline, some of our commissioners have come in and talked about it. Are you heading up the transportation committee? Is that what you were saying?
Well, I am the co-chair of the
Co-chair.
committee with Representative Cathy McEwen from Coos Bay.
Awesome. Can you talk a little bit about the transportation committee and what its goals are?
Okay. Well, we've been trying the last few sessions to reach an agreement in the legislature on funding transportation, and without success. The most recent one was 2015 when there was the media tagged the Gang of Eight, met for about 6 weeks and tried to come up with an agreement and failed, quite frankly. That effort was largely criticized as, a group of legislators meeting in a closed room out of public view, which I guess was true. So the leadership of the legislature, the Speaker and the President said, we're going to do this one in the public and full open view. So we have 14 legislators. Those 14 comprise half from the House and half from the Senate, and they are a bipartisan group spread from throughout the state, so there's good geographic spread to it. And we have been going around the state. We're about to complete 11-city tour, if you will, over the summer, sort of traveling all over. Started out in East Multnomah County, then did Salem, Ontario, Hermiston, Eugene, Bend, Medford, Newport. For the coast, we wanted to try to cover the whole coast, and then we did one more in Salem, and I think it's next week, we go to Albany. Mm-hmm. So we're pretty good, and the basic question was asking Oregonians what it is that they wanted out of their transportation system, and on the other side of that coin was, what are you willing to pay for?
Sure.
So kind of stuff.
Was your tour talking to people? Were you out looking at, going around? Because I would think, Hermiston has a very different transportation need than we do here, obviously. So, was that kind of you trying to figure out what some of those different needs were?
That's basically it, and surprisingly, the needs are common throughout the state. Our basic model that we would do is we would go out and meet first with what's called the Area Transfer Act. I'm trying to remember what that stands for. It's actually the local group of transportation, civic and business leaders that are appointed in each region to prioritize their transportation need and provide that to the Oregon Transportation Commission. Mm-hmm. So we would meet with them, and they would go across their projects and tell us what they thought the needs were. Then we would tour the area and look at different projects and what needed to be done. And then we would hold a public hearing where we would sort of say, okay, you elected officials, your local guys, you had your shot. Now we want to hear from the public. And surprisingly, we had really strong turnouts at every meeting we held across the state, usually 70 to 150 or more people each time. So that was, in my experience, and local and state government, those were really well-attended hearings. So I guess that's an expression of people cared.
Right. Well, and, it's you guys as a committee, you can't make improvements if you don't hear from the public. So it's great that people were turning out and voicing opinions and things.
Yeah, the message that we heard was pretty consistent throughout the state. Number one in people's minds was preserving the investment that they have already made in streets and roads throughout the area. Mm-hmm. That makes good sense. If you look at that from an engineer's perspective, when you let the road deteriorate, it costs you 4 to 5 times more to rebuild it because you got to tear it up and start all over again. But if you just maintain it, you can keep it forever in terms of the roads. Mm-hmm. Second biggest thing we heard, a big concern about public safety. And when we were on the coast, a lot of concern about 101 and bicyclists right in there.
Yes.
Big part of your economy in terms of tourism and all that. A big concern about that. Heard that same thing in Eastern Oregon, which surprised me, as well as down south in Medford and in Bend. Another big voice that we heard, and this really surprised me, was transit. We figured we would hear that in the metro area, in Eugene, Salem, Portland.
Sure.
But we were surprised to hear that in Eastern Oregon and on the coast, too. Little different pieces on the coast and particularly Bend and the coastal areas they were talking about. We have some services, but we don't connect very well.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in Tillamook, there may be a service that gets you to halfway to Portland, but then it misses by a couple of miles from connecting to another service that would get you into OSHU, one of those. And I know that's a big issue that Senator Johnson has brought up over there, trying to talk about is there a way we can fix that. Some discussion in Bend and on the coast about the cost of housing and low wages and people who have working in the industries there having to live farther out, not having the means to get to work.
Right, right.
Particularly big issue in Central Oregon. The other thing that we heard a lot from people, frankly, was a desire for bike paths and walking paths. I'm outside of being a state senator. I'm also a member of a board of directors for a park district, and that's consistent what we have heard over the years. We do a survey about every 3 years of our citizens and say, what is it you want in your park service? And surprising to me is always comes up at the top is bikes and walking paths.
Sure.
I guess that's a desire of people to get healthy.
Yeah, well, and if like we don't have a lot here. There's a few, but you kind of have to drive to them.
Right. Right.
And yeah, it's hard for families to be able to go enjoy some time outside if there's not a place to go do it.
Absolutely. I've heard that a lot from Senator Roblin and Senator Johnson on your coastal areas. It's sort of a mix sometimes of criticizing it, sometimes saying, but we want ours.
Yeah, right. Portland's got a really nice one. I think they have like 140 miles or something like that of bike paths that connect all over the city. So what are some of the next steps once your tour? Because you said you had one more stop next week.
We have one more, and then we've asked the Transportation Commission to start giving us some prioritized lists because they obviously are closer to the projects than we are, and said, tell us what needs to be done and how much that kind of thing costs. And then, there's a balancing act. We're well aware that we're not going to be able to afford everything that people would like to have, and we have to balance that with, what people can afford. So we're trying to, we'll get to that point of trying to say, okay, what is it? And there's a mix of obviously new things that people want. And I just wanted to say was that surprising to me throughout the state, people were very concerned about congestion in the Portland metro area from a business perspective, and which makes sense. Oregon is an exporting state, so you've got to get those products to the ports, which unfortunately tend to be up in Puget Sound now. Or if you want to go into your local Safeway or something, most of the goods that happen to hit those shelves come down on truck from that area too. So that's a big piece of the problem that people in the business community are concerned about. So
right.
And then certainly seismic. We're very, very aware, and I think people on the coast are probably more attuned to this than people in the valley in Eastern Oregon, but we're very attuned to if that earthquake and tsunami happens, we need to be able to be prepared to deal with that. And so we've asked the Transportation Project to look at that and say, where does the overlap, if you will, of projects, where will they be, and can we get there? I know Senator Roblin and Senator Johnson both have been incredibly loud voices about needing to prepare for that and take care of the folks on the coast, and I think they do a good job for you guys.
Yes, I know. Betsy is a very big champion of the coast. I know that. She's out here all the time. We're going to take a quick break and talk about Clark's Plumbing. Do you know one of those do-it-yourself kind of guys? They're always telling you to do it yourself. Well, sometimes that isn't the best solution. You're in luck, whether it's a leaky faucet, a complete bathroom remodel, or maybe replacing that septic system. Do yourself a favor, call Clark's Plumbing. They're professionals, they'll get the job done. Anything, new installations, upgrades, that stopped-up drain, you name it, they can do it. So the next time you hear do it yourself, do yourself a favor and call 842-5105. That's 842-5105 for the professionals at Clark's Plumbing. So we're talking with Senator Lee Beyer, right? Beyer.
Beyer.
It looks like, no, I guess that would be right. Dreyer's ice cream. Yeah, I was thinking ice cream. Your last name kind of looks like the ice cream. So I just actually mentioned that Senator Johnson makes visits out here. Have you been out to Tillamook lately? Do you ever come up here? I know we're not in your district, right? Because your district is south, like Springfield area.
It's Eugene Springfield area, in the valley. So no, I have been out to Tillamook, but I haven't been out there. Probably in the last year. Mm-hmm. Tend to go a little more because I'm farther down over to the Florence Newport areas, mm-hmm. or south into Coos Bay. It's a beautiful area. That Pacific City and up beside, those are beautiful areas up in there.
Yep, they sure are. Hey, can you talk a little bit about Measure 97 and kind of what your viewpoints are on that? I know it's it's everybody's talking about it, so just thought I would throw that out there. Everyone's talking about it, so why shouldn't you?
What I have been telling people, I haven't taken a position on it. I spent my first 10 years in the legislature on the Revenue Committee, so I understand the issue pretty well.
Right.
Quite frankly, my view is that, like many initiative petitions, they're written to pass, not to be good law. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the case with 97. I think there are a number of problems with it. So we've got that, and I know that it can be fixed. Personally, I was in the legislature in 95 when then Measure 47, a property tax law, passed that could not be implemented the way it was written, and I spent a month working on rewriting that and referring to voters what was Measure 50 to fix it. So I know you can do that. So on one hand, you've got a measure that is not well written and probably would need to be changed if passed. On the other hand, it raises a lot of money. So the question then becomes one of, if you look at the state budget as we see it going into the session, legislature is in a very uncomfortable position. We will either be cutting 6 to 9% of the state budget across the board if the measure passes, or if it fails. If it passes, we will have money to add more money to schools and take care of the health care issues for low-income people and kids. So it's a tough decision either way. From someone, I've spent a lot of time with Senator Roblin on the Education Committee and fixing that, and I'm very proud of the fact that in the 2013 biennial budget, we made the largest increase in investment in the history of the state in K-12 education, and we followed that up with another huge chunk in the last session. To be looking at going into the next one and saying, well, that was great, now we're going to lay teachers off again is disconcerting.
Mm-hmm. So I know I've heard two different sides of Measure 97. I've heard it's only corporations that do business or are headquartered or ship into Oregon. But then I've also heard it's a veiled sales tax that we are, as the consumer, are still going to be paying more, and there will be a tax. So how does that balance out? Do you know what I'm saying? I'm personally confused. Is it a sales tax that we're going to have, or is it just can you help explain that? Do you know?
Sure. It's just like, from a business perspective, it's just like any other business expense or tax. If you're paying corporate taxes, or if you're a small business and paying personal income taxes, you obviously are going to try to pass as much of that on to your customers as you can. Some can, some can't. Mm-hmm. Technically, what the tax is it's only a tax on large corporations, those who have $25 million or more a year in Oregon sales. That's that's all they pay. You know? So you're getting the big corporations that, by and large, now are able to shield their tax liability. And I think the reality of that is, to the extent they can, like any other business expense, they're going to include in their prices. So I guess you could say that they're going to pass it on. It'll be a sales tax, but it's no more sales tax than property taxes are or local development fees. It's the same kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
I think, yeah, and I'm looking up on Google here while we're talking, because I think what I saw recently, the latest thing I saw was that it's a tax on the sales but not the profit, which makes it a little different, because if they don't have a large profit margin, they could be paying more, and it's going to obviously eat into the profit margin because it's on the sales. But it's not, what did you say the minimum requirement was? Because I know people have talked about small businesses, but a small business isn't making $25 million in sales. That's not what I would consider a small business.
Right. No, these are only large, and it's called a C corporation. That's a definition. Most small businesses that are incorporated are what's called an S corporation. It would not affect those. It would not affect limited liability companies or limited partnerships or sole proprietorships. So it's only on the bigger companies that are C corps. And again, the threshold is they don't pay it unless they have $25 million in in-state sales.
Mm-hmm. So not even just
for
sales.
Example, if you're a timber company and you're selling logs to Japan, you wouldn't pay taxes on that either.
Right. Yeah, so it's just in Oregon sales. Okay.
Correct.
That makes sense. I have to take another quick break. We're going to talk about the co-op. Tillamook is farm country, and nobody serves this farming community better than the co-op. The co-op is actually 3 stores in one. Are you looking for work clothes, hickory shirts, work boots, rubber boots, rain gear, and gloves? The co-op has it. You'll also find fencing, stock tanks, and everything from PVC to culvert pipe in stock. Tillamook Farmers Co-op treats you right. When you stop for fuel, your windows are always washed, and they care about their customers. Plus, the co-op has Purina feeds to help keep your livestock thrive. Offering quality products since 1936, Tillamook Farmers Co-op is there for you. So we're talking to Lee Beyer. I got it right. Senator Beyer, who is calling in last minute for Artie, and we highly appreciate that. The other kind of hot topic measure that has come up a couple times is Measure 99. And we actually have people calling in tomorrow to talk about it. Outdoor school for all. I'm not really necessarily asking you to tell us a position, but can you talk about that measure at all? Do you understand?
Well, as I understand it, Measure 99, the outdoor schools. No one's going to argue with outdoor schools. My 3 children all went to outdoor schools while they were in middle school. Mm-hmm. A great thing. That's not the issue. The issue is how we're going to pay for it. What the measure relies on is taking money that is currently in the lottery fund and dedicating it to do that. One of the problems with that is we now have gotten to the point where we've almost totally tied up the lottery fund with dedication to one place or another. Mm-hmm. You may recall that 15% comes off the top and goes to parks. No argument with that.
Sure.
State parks, and actually some of that goes to local parks. Another 15% was dedicated by the public to go to the school stabilization fund. Again, no problem with that. Then off the top also comes a good share of it goes to the counties. And so we're starting to slice it up. And one of the fears that I have from a transportation perspective is we created a program about 6 years ago called Connect Oregon, which allowed us to spend part of the money lottery-backed bonds. So you're borrowing money and backing it by the lottery, cash stream, to work on ports and rural airports and railroad facilities like the Coos Bay Rail Line, for example. Those kinds of things. And if we pass this, it's to the point where we may not have that money, and we do not have another source of revenue to do that with. We would have to, that's one we'd have to take it out of schools if we wanted to do that, or health care. And so that's problematic. The other one is, better than 50% of the budget currently goes to schools. And
Right.
that money goes directly to schools, and it's up to the local school board to decide how they're going to use that money to educate the young kids in their area. And it's within their decision power to make that, if they want to fund a local outdoor program or not. And some do, some don't. So it's that's kind of the nature of the problem with that. Not arguing that it's a great idea for kids to have that experience, although one could say in Oregon, particularly in the smaller rural towns, kids get out in the woods a lot.
Yeah, yep. Well, I know we have, I think Tillamook School District just went a couple weeks ago, and I think this week is Neoconi's outdoor school. And I went when I was a kid. It was fun. Learned things, of course.
Sure.
But yeah, how do you have any idea how many schools actually, or like what percentage of schools actually do use outdoor school or have outdoor school? Any idea?
I don't. I know where I live, where my kids went, they do it. It's not like 2 weeks. It's like maybe 3 or 4 days.
Right. Oh yeah, no, yeah.
And they combine it like with their science classes.
So does the measure? I haven't really looked into it that much. That's why I'm asking. Does the measure require that all school, will it be a law then that schools have to do it, or do they still have a choice if they're going to use that money for outdoor school or not?
I'm not as familiar with it as I am with some of the other ones. I believe it's a grant program to the schools.
Gotcha.
I think it's an allocation, but I'm not sure. It may be that they have to ask for it. But I believe it ties in with coordination through, I think, Oregon State, the Extension Service, to try and put it together. But I'm not positive about that.
Oh, they were just in here yesterday. I could have asked them about it. Although I don't know that they would have known. Is there anything in the upcoming? We have just a few minutes left. Is there anything in the upcoming election that besides those two things? It's funny. When Betsy called in a couple weeks ago, those were the two things that she talked about. So I was curious, is there anything you would implore the listeners to pay attention to on the ballot?
Well, I think generally it's just looking at who you got up for election in your local area. I think that's the big thing. You happen to have an Arnie Roblin, probably one of the most respected legislators in the building from both sides. I mean, and the business community. The fact that he was recognized during his year as speaker as their Citizen of the Year, it's a pretty big honor.
Yeah,
he's been really an outspoken supporter of the coast. I'm always impressed with his Coastal Caucus events that he puts on every year. I mean, I had some people out of the governor's office and others talking about that's become a don't miss event. I mean, you had
it's the who's who.
Both the United States senators and the governor attending the one this year. So wow. I think you got a go-to guy.
Yeah. Are there any measures that because I know the ballot, it's so much to look at. I mean, so of course, everybody should look at everything in detail, but sometimes you don't have time to. So is there anything else that you would, a measure that people should really kind of hone in on and pay attention to?
Well, frankly, the big one is 97, and I think that's a tough choice that public going to have to meet. I mean, if it's the one thing I've heard the most from my constituents, and I hear the most of the legislators talking about the building, is an inability of the state of Oregon to fund education, particularly things like not just the K-12, but college. There's a big national concern about the ability to pay, without getting out of college with the big debt.
Right.
Even to the extent that many advisors now are telling kids, maybe you don't want to go to college. Maybe you'll never recoup that money. I happen to think that's wrong. It's one of the things we've been working on in the Education Committee that Arnie chairs is the Oregon Promise, wherein we're promising all community college kids that they can go to college and have their tuition and fees covered. That's been remarkable. We're only the second state in the nation to be able to do that. I know both of the Democratic candidates for president have made that as one of their chief goals is to do that. So That's kind of a big thing. My head is mainly focused on building the transportation system and assuring that we have a solid educational system in place for Oregon. I think that's the key mark to our continued financial success as a state.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for calling in today. I have to run through some things here real quick, and then I'll sign off. Let's see. Tomorrow, like I mentioned, folks will be here talking about Measure 99, Outdoor School for All. Don't forget senior meals, noon every weekday at the Kiowanda Community Center in Pacific City. Cost is $3 for seniors and $6.75 for everyone else. Tomorrow at 5:30, there's a hula class at Oregon Coast Dance Center. This low-impact class uses traditional hula steps and instruments to study the beautiful art of the island dance. Contact 842-7447 for more info. On Thursday, the Farm Bureau is coordinating a meeting to discuss the aerial application of pesticides and recent communication regarding such. It's 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the OSU Extension Office. Lunch is provided, and I just realized that you're supposed to RSVP by yesterday, so if you want to go, you might be able to still get in. Email Angie, ANGI, at ofsonline.org. Thursday, the Tillamook PUD Board is holding a workshop on the proposed transmission line from Tillamook to Oceanside from 6 to 8:30 at the Carl Raw Meeting Room inside the PUD at 1115 Pacific Avenue. The public is welcome. Friday is the final 2016 Year of Wellness Tillamook Talk, which is scheduled from noon to 2 at the Tillamook Forestry Center, which is over by the fairgrounds. Dr. Kathy Gunter will be talking about bone health throughout your life. Friday and Saturday at 7, the musical review Lulu's Back in Town will be held at Tappa's Barn Community Playhouse, which is over by Les Schwab. Tickets are available at Diamond Art Jewelers, 842-7940, $15 a person. And on Sunday, Tappa is holding their annual meeting at the Barn Community Playhouse starting at 3. Food and beverages will be provided. It's your chance to meet the board, find out what's been accomplished in the past year, and what the goals for the upcoming year are. Thanks again, Lee, for calling in this morning.
You bet. Have a nice day.
You too. And thank you, Tillamook, for listening.